More questions, dear students? Yes. Milei. Well, Mr. Milei, well, it must be said that I have thousands of disciples. The vast majority of them have never been involved in politics, and I discourage them from going into politics. But this one has been involved in politics and is the first of my disciples to reach the presidency of a government. It is interesting because he is an educated person, contrary to the stereotype or the caricature that the media want to make of him. He is a professor of economic theory, or rather, as they say there, a full professor. That is, he knows the arguments perfectly well, something that does not usually happen with politicians who are ignorant in social science, both those who opposed him and those who are here, that is, not even the president. Well, the president of the government is an economist and a doctor, but he is a very special case, and we are going to leave him aside. But Faijo and the others, Rajoy, are usually lawyers, jurists. Politicians are not usually economists. Milei is a peculiar character because he knows perfectly well the arguments, and in the debates he easily dismantles his opponents, bam, 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 bam. What happens is that he has a very aggressive manner. Apparently, from our perspective, sometimes it seems that he starts shouting, that he is an energetic person, or that he loses his temper. I would say rather that he is, you who are of audio-visual communication, he is 50% theater, 50% lack of patience. He has no patience in the face of stupidity. It's both 50% theater and 50% miss, don't interrupt me. Lack of patience. And then, after dismantling anyone in the debate, he ends up telling them, and you know that I tell you, besides everything else, that you are a fucking lefty. Of course, to say this to a person on television in the most important prime time of national television. Well, in Europe, in Spain, that person would be immediately disqualified, because apparently these schemes do not work like that in Argentina. And every time he said a fucking lefty, he got 100,000 more votes. There are many explanations as to why this may be due, that the situation there is really desperate. And bear in mind that a reform in the right direction towards the dismantling of the state has never succeeded, except in very dire circumstances or social disaster. We have the best known case, which is the triumph of the social market economy in post-World War II Germany. Germany was absolutely destroyed by bombing. In a situation of overwhelm, all the cities turned into rubble. The Allies dropped millions of tons of bombs on Germany, and there was a general shortage of all basic necessities: bread, butter, potatoes, and physical hunger. Then it only occurred to the occupying powers, advised by their expert social engineers, to establish price ceilings and rationing cards. Well, a purely coincidental circumstance occurred that the American occupiers took out of their farm a German who was hidden in the cellar. His name was Adenauer. And why? He was chosen because he had been one of the few who before the war became mayor, I think it was of Munich, and he opposed Hitler, but then he was thrown out of politics. Well, they took him out of the basement. He was terrified. He thought they were going to shoot him. It turned out that they weren't. They told him, we're going to put you at the front of a political party. This is the only thing that the Americans did right in the occupation. You're the Christian Democrat, come on, and set up democracy here. And so it was. And Adenauer set up his government. And who did he choose as Minister of Economy? A friend of his name was Ludwig Erhard. Erhard had been a student of Röpke and Mises, the author of our textbook, and Erhard knew the theory. Then one weekend he convinces Adenauer, tells him that everything that the occupying policies are doing is madness and that a radical reform is needed, a radical change of direction, absolute shock therapy. They enact a decree published at 8 o'clock the following Monday morning, which says, sole article, all maximum and minimum prices, all intervention and all rationing cards are eliminated in the Federal Republic of Germany. Article, first and only. When the generals of the occupying powers received the article, the anecdote is that the American general dropped his coffee, threw up, immediately pressed a button, called the others together, let them come here to Adenauer and Erhard. They were called to account and they told them, you are absolutely crazy. You had no authority to do this. we're going to dismiss you. There is only one chance for them to save themselves, that tomorrow they will make another decree annulling the one they have just published today. Erhard says in his memoirs that the poor man was receiving all the scolding with his fingers crossed and saying to himself, "Dear Madonna, may economic theory work. Dear Madonna, may economic theory work." And do you know what happened that Monday? When the Germans, with their country destroyed, read the decree that everything was liberalized all at once. All at once. From under the stones and from the rubble of all German cities, countless spontaneous markets were set up. Countless spontaneous markets filled to overflowing. Of potatoes, onions, milk, bread. And it was so obvious that the occupying powers had to take it upon themselves. And that was the beginning of the so-called German economic miracle, the German Wirtschaft, economy, Wunder, miracle. How could such a radical liberalization measure be taken? Because the country was plunged into a situation of tremendous tragedy. Margaret Thatcher, another case, England sunk. From being the head of an empire, she begins to be the victim of interventionism and socialism. By both parties, not only the Labour Party, but also the Conservative Party. I remember Edward Heath. You were not born absolutely socialist, although he was from the Conservative Party. It was losing points and positions until England's per capita income fell below that of Italy. Just look at the situation. A country totally destroyed in the hands of the trade unions, which set and undid governments as they pleased. It was such a tragic situation that only in that context can it be understood that Margaret Thatcher came out ahead, won the elections, and also carried out a radical reform. She put an end to all the privileges of the unions and liberalized all the markets in one fell swoop. She was very clever. She had previously accumulated coal in abundance to be able to spend the winter and avoid the blackmail of the unions, leaving the whole population without heating. And here comes the triumph of Thatcher's liberal conservative revolution in England and Ronald Reagan's in the United States. And before the elections, I wondered, would the situation in Argentina be so catastrophic that a turnaround in the elections could take place? And it seems to be so. The situation is tremendous. 150% inflation, 50% poverty, people looking for the garbage cans, etc. All the result of socialism, because all the measures of redistribution, intervention, etc. have been tried there. Tremendous. Well, it seems that, yes, now Milei is taking a gamble, because one of two things. Either he takes all the measures immediately via decree, all at once, in shock therapy plan, the next day or the next week, or else he is lost. It will happen to him, as it happened to Macri, his predecessor. He will be a failure, and furthermore, this failure will be blamed on the ideas of freedom. We are at a key moment from a historical point of view. Notwithstanding this, I have to say that to my great joy, I have followed the elections and I have followed the comments of Televisión Nacional. What Televisión Nacional has done has been shameful, inviting enemies of of Milei, contacting the one who has written the biography, El Loco, everybody interpreting that he is a madman, an unhinged person, etc. But my joy was very great, because for the first time I have seen that in a generalized way, people started to talk in the networks, in the media, in the national television, controlled by the government, in the national radio, about anarcho-capitalism this, anarcho-capitalism that, and look how crazy this guy is. He wants to do away with the state, the subsidies, to reduce taxes, to leave freedom to everybody. Is he crazy? Mises used to say that the important thing is to be talked about, even if it is bad. And more than one person who listens to it will remain in his subconscious and will say, well, maybe he is not so crazy. This idea of doing away with subsidies and aid, making us all independent, lowering taxes and giving a chance to freedom, maybe it is not so bad. And I love the fact that anarcho-capitalism is starting to be heard, because the one who has introduced the term in Spain and to a great extent in the world is yours truly. And that a president of the government declares himself an anarcho-capitalist, well, it seems to me to be the highest honor. They have published in the press several comments on my relationship with Milei. I don't know if you have seen it. An article from the BBC, another one from the press. Look at it. You will see it there. And they even refer to this classroom. It is curious. Well, those are the comments you were told about Milei. Does anyone want to add anything about Milei? That's not known. They say there are no dollars to dollarize. It's false. 2 years ago, the official relation, peso dollar, was 25 pesos to $1. Today, in the black market, it is 925 pesos to $1. If Milei eliminates, there are 27 different exchange rates. It is an incredible thing. 27 different exchange rates. Then, depending on the friend you have, depending on the type of operation you are going to carry out, they give you one exchange rate or another. The bureaucratic officials with political influence make a millionaire out of one and destroy the life of another, depending on whether they give you permission to export or import with one exchange rate or another. The first rule they have to do is all exchange rates are unified at the market rate, which is the black market rate, and I guarantee you, at 1,000 pesos to the dollar, Argentine goods and services are so infinitely cheap. The world turns to buying in dollars, all of Argentina. In short, Argentina is flooded with dollars, and dollarization becomes feasible. And I will end with a final comment which will sound a bit Chinese to you, but which is the result of my monetary contributions. It is vital that dollarization be accompanied by the requirement of a 100% cash coefficient for demand, deposits, and equivalents, because otherwise, at the slightest change, at the slightest crisis of confidence, open for internal or external reasons or both. If people go for their dollars and they are not there, there will be another Corralito, as they already had one in Cavallo's time, and the social damage was tremendous, and that would completely discredit Milei and his followers. Inseparable from dollarization is the objective of a 100% cash ratio, which, by the way, I have always defended for 30 years, that it is the essential reform required by the modern financial system to be compatible with a true market economy and with the capitalist system. We will talk about this a little more after the long weekend of the Constitution, when we will talk about money. Any more comments on Milei? Let's follow closely to see what happens. Another point. Don't be fooled into thinking that Milei is an ultra-right-winger or that he is a fellow traveler of Donald Trump or Bolsonaro, etc. It has nothing to do with it. There is an article today in the Wall Street Journal explaining it. Donald Trump is a tremendous interventionist. He is in favor of raising tariffs. He is an enemy of free trade. He wants to protect American industry by establishing walls to the free importation of goods and services. He is just the opposite of what Milei defends. Who is not an ultra-right-winger? He is an ultra-liberal. He, in the speech, did not dare to say, I am an anarcho-capitalist. He said, I am a libertarian liberal. Donald Trump wants to manipulate money, lower interest rates, and make inflation, when Milei wants to do just the opposite, return to a strong currency, and do away with the central bank. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. Milei is a true liberal, while Donald Trump and the other fellow travelers are right-wing populists, for they advocate right-wing socialism, state interventionism in the economy, not freedom. And long fucking left freedom, which is the campaign slogan. There is a curious thing, and it is that in the first round, he got 30% of the votes. That 30% was all the Argentine youth. That is to say, he sweeps with the young people. With young people from 30 years old and below, 100% vote for them, but it does not matter. Upper class, middle class, and above all, lower class. It is an interesting social phenomenon because young people are not corrupted. Young people want to have a future in life. Young people appreciate freedom. They have not yet been a victim of political correctness, nor have they been victims of subsidies or dependence on the state. State intervention is like a drug. Once you become dependent, it is impossible to get off it. Young people have not yet fallen, for the most part, into this drug addiction that is statism, whether right-wing or left-wing. Well, this is my comment on Milei.